right, guys. All right. Let's talk Starfield because I'm interested. I always have been. I always thought that this is going to be a game I play, and we'll let the presentation run here in the background, and we'll put a full link to this in the description below. It looks great. It looks like a single player game where you'll be able to go through and obviously play the game, sort of like what Squadron 42 is going to be, right? But with like an open world aspect. So there are a couple of things that I've noticed and a few other people have noticed. And there's a couple of things that I want to talk about that are the plus advantages. So this is sort of going to be like a balanced sort of look at how the game is, right? So let's break it down. Let's start with the good stuff. For a start, I love the fact that we've got beards. Star Citizen, take note. But yeah, obviously the character customizer is obviously very interesting. That is great. Obviously the worlds themselves look fantastic. The environments. Obviously the combat looks good. I like the ship modularity that is there. That looks fantastic. And I love the fact that you can board ships and stuff like that. So overall, like I say, I'm interested. I'm probably going to pre-order it today. My concerns, though, about the stuff they didn't show. And this is where sort of people are sort of not seeing the forest for the trees. For a start, the one thing I noticed, and also Luke, who also runs a YouTube channel, also noticed, and full credit to him for noticing this, is there's no vehicles. Apart from the ships, and the ships in space and stuff, when it comes to the planets, you seemingly are walking everywhere. Now, I think I know why they've done this, and we'll get to that, but there's no ground vehicles. There sort of doesn't seem to be any atmospheric flight. It seems to be a case of you want to land on a planet, you click somewhere, and then it cuts to a cut screen of you landing on this planet. Is it a deal breaker, to quote Luke? No, it's not. But I think it is a limitation of the tech. So, what do I think? Okay, what do I think they've done? I think what they've done is they've built a planet out of about 20 or 30 or whatever maps. Right? So you have these large maps that are probably huge. Right? But what you do also have is you have 15 or 20 of them on the surface of the planet. Which is why we don't get atmospheric flight or ground vehicles. Because I imagine you're going to bump up against that boundary line. Especially if they were to give you a vehicle or atmospheric flight. So like, for example, one map, it might be 5 kilometers by 5 kilometers or whatever it may be, or 10 kilometers by 10 kilometers, right? But then if they were to give you a vehicle, well, that 10Ks is a lot easier to navigate and a lot quicker. And all of a sudden you have people slamming into invisible boundaries. I don't think it has like what Star Citizen has with the sort of the loading in and loading out. I think what you're going to have to do is fly up to the atmosphere, up into space, and then click on somewhere else, which would then load that tile when coming down. Now, like I say, the reason why I think this is obviously a limitation with the tech. I don't think they've got like fully sort of atmospheric flying around like what Star Citizen or No Man's Sky has. But at the end of the day, I think it's just a limitation of the engine that they're using. I think it's Unreal. I'm not sure which engine they use. But yeah, I think it's a limitation of their engine. Like I say, it's not a deal breaker. Sure. Is it unfortunate? Yes. Is it a bit sad that a major studio, by the way, Bethesda, one of the biggest studios out there, can't seem to get this tech working, but CIG can? Is a little, okay, sure. No Man's Sky was able to do it as well with a very small team. So there's that. But I think this is obviously to do with Bethesda and their full-on copium when it deals with them just using their engine. That they're not interested in going through and trying anything new or trying anybody else's engine or anything like that. They just want to use their creation engine. I think it's called creation, actually. So at the end of the day, I think it's a limitation with that tech. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I said, it's not a deal breaker. But, yeah, it also makes me wonder what's going to happen with space as well, right? Because you're flying around in space, like, is there going to be, like, invisible boundaries that you hit to? Like they say here, like, you can go and visit the moons and stuff. Are you going to be able to just fly to that moon? Or are you going to have to, quote, warp, which is just a loading screen, to that moon? Like here, you see here. They're showing you the solar system. I'll pause the video. They've got the solar system up, right? Like if you were to go from here, this planet, to say the gas giant, the Saturn-like planet over here. Obviously you can't see my mouse, but you know what I mean. Can you just fly there, or do you have to, quote, warp or grav drive, whatever they want to call it? I think it's going to be the later. So at the end of the day, that is obviously one thing that I'm kind of bummed about. I presume there's going to be a whole bunch of Starfield fanboys in the comments saying, it's not a big deal, man. Copium. I think you got the copium, to be honest. But regardless. Like I say, it's a little bit sad that Starfield was able to do this with a 20-something man team. Star Citizen was able to do it with a 100-something man team. But Bethesda Studios, who has, 1,000 people? Let me double check. So I just did a very quick search here, and it literally says, according to Todd Howard, the CEO of Bethesda Game Studio, total number of people working on Bethesda Studios is almost 400. The number of people involved with any given project changes over the time, which is obviously, yep. So even if 90 people were working on Starfield full-time in June 2019, it's unlikely they started with those 90 people 3.5 years before. And in fact, he's actually been talking about building Starfield since like 27. So Starfield has actually been in development longer than Star Citizen in some form or another. So for all the Star Citizen haters that go, oh my god, 10 years in development, yeah, don't talk about Starfield. So apart from that, obviously that's the big issue I have, is obviously just the fact that it seems like obviously that you're limited to tiles, and they're obviously scattered over the planet. Now obviously there's also 1,000 planets, which is a cool number to put on a trailer, but what does it mean for actually us? Not a lot. Look, to be honest, they said there's 4 cities, and obviously they're talking about putting out some DLCs. They do mention at the end of this, when they talk about the editions, that there's a free edition. And let me see if I can just skip to it, actually. So, 640, remember that. Here it is here. Can you get rid of the tiles off the screen? Here, Shattered Space, first story expansion. So, and like he says, he does admit in there that they are planning on going through and doing expansions and stuff like that. So, like I say, I would expect it to obviously change in the future. Obviously add more cities and stuff like that. But once again, we only have 4 major cities. Now, obviously, there's going to be outposts and obviously, you know, presumably derelicts and stuff that you'll be able to go through and find. But only 4 major cities? In 1,000 planets? Okay. We have that with Star Citizen already. I know people are going to be like, oh my god, this is a totally different game. Please stop comparing. I'm sorry, but there are a lot of similarities between these 2 games. Obviously, one's single player, one is multiplayer. Fine, if you want to go through and compare Squadron 42 to Starfield, obviously fine. We don't know much about Squadron 42 because it's been tightly lipped. So, the closest analogy we have is No Man's Sky or something like that. Maybe like Outer Worlds was another one that you can compare it to. But at the end of the day, only 4 cities. But like I say, there are going to be outposts and stuff like that. Fine. Great. Terrific. But only 4 major cities? Really? 4? I presume that's because of time constraints. I presume that obviously when the DLCs come out, that will obviously change. They'll obviously add more cities and stuff. Fine. Great. Terrific. But what do you do about people who have gone through and actually put bases down where you plan to put these major cities to? So maybe they've sort of like set them as reserved spaces. Can't speak English. But yeah, like I say, at the end of the day, it's just... I like the premise. I like what they're doing. I like the fact that obviously they have this storyline and everything like that. It's just... I'm starting to see some sort of crinkles in the armor. For example, the atmospheric flight, no vehicles, the only 4 major cities. Like I said, yeah, sure, they're going to be like outposts and stuff like that. But how many of those are going to be different? Are they all going to look the same or the same sort of variations? Like obviously you can do base building, and we'll get to the good stuff in a sec. Obviously you can do base building and stuff, but like it's a single player game too. It's not like you're going to be able to bump along and bump into someone else's base. So you're going to be basically stuck with, game generated bases and whatever you build. Obviously the creature animations and the creatures look fantastic. I absolutely love that. I love the New Atlantis setup. Like I say, I'd imagine that is one tile, by the way. So if you want to know like the idea of size of the city or how big these tiles I imagine they're doing, I imagine it's the size of New Atlantis. I don't think you're going to be able to go through, and this is where I'm getting is I don't think they have that loading tech, that streaming in, streaming out tech, like what CIG's got. But obviously the social spaces look fantastic. They look amazing. I just wish there was more. The creatures look fantastic, look amazing. Obviously I'm loving to see what sort of alien fauna and flora that is around. And that's obviously interesting too. I like the pirates. I love the fractions that are in there. That is obviously fantastic. Hours without incident. I love it. But yeah, I love the pirates and the fractions and stuff, and the abilities to sort of like work with these groups and stuff like that, or work against them maybe. That looks obviously pretty cool as well. I love the HUD. The HUD looks fantastic. Like I say, yeah, I like these social spaces. I kind of wish there was more than 11. 4. But obviously, let's go through and let's talk about gameplay and FPS. So at the end of the day, obviously, the big question that we have that was never really answered is FPS. I cannot imagine this running over much more than 30 or 60 FPS. I would say you're probably going to be pushing 30 on a console. I would say you're probably going to be pushing 60 on a PC. Although if they are doing the tile system and that planet tech that I'm talking about, you might be able to get more out of it, because obviously you don't have to load the whole planet. You only have to load where you're landing, or that particular tile. So maybe that's why they're doing it that way as well. There's performance. But at the end of the day, obviously, yeah, I can't imagine it getting any more than 30 or 60 FPS. It does look smooth. But look, and here's the thing too. Sometimes getting 24 FPS looks really smooth. We have this with Star Citizen, for example. We only may be getting high 20s, low 30s. Unless you're in space, then obviously you get higher. And it looks fantastic still. So I'm not one of these guys that sort of sit there and beat my meat over, 60 FPS, 4K, sort of stuff. Obviously, as long as it's not jerky and it's playable, then that's all I care about, right? The character customizer was obviously fantastic. I love the fact that you've got that. They do actually show. Here it is here. So obviously they go through. They talk about here's your, and this is something that I wish CIG would put in. Obviously you got your biometrics, you got your body, face, background, you got your traits, which is obviously going to be like skills and stuff like that, or your personality. Then you've got nose, ears, cheeks, mouth, and teeth. This is obviously just going to be like presets, I imagine. They did say something about blending. So that is interesting. But for all the people that hated on CIG's character customizer, I'm looking forward to you hating on Starfield because it looks like it's going to be a lot of the same. So, yeah, can't wait for those videos. Because it's not going to happen. But at the end of the day, yeah, obviously with the nose you can go through, you do your presets, and then you might be able to blend them. They did say something about blending people together or something like that. So obviously it's similar to what we got with CIG. Obviously beards could obviously do with a little bit of work. Looks average. Beards, mustaches and stuff like that. But obviously, that also might be limit with tech as well. But obviously, considering we don't have that in Star Citizen, yeah, step up, I suppose. I also noticed that you could go through and you could change your character's sort of muscle tone and stuff. Let me see if I can find it. So here, obviously, you've got like the standard defaults. And then here, you've got muscular, heavy, or thin. You've got body type 1 and 2, walk style 1 and 2. Wow, they didn't even put male or female. So at the end of the day, that ESG, when it comes to the, obviously here, you got your muscular, your heavy, your thin. But it's going to be the same as like CIG. Obviously, they've got to have like a certain range. Because at the end of the day, you obviously won't be able to make these massively orca overweight people, because obviously that would just like mess with ship metrics and stuff like that. But yeah, but at the end of the day, obviously you've got the body types, male, female. You got your walk style, which is obviously 1 and 2. I did notice this down here. You got skin tone, which is obviously cool. But I suppose it's a multiplayer, so it's not something like what we need. But I was going to say, but like they're sort of going for this genetic code thing. And this is something that I wish CIG would put in theirs, is I wish they go through and sort of add some sort of way of keeping your character the same through wipes, but that's a video for Star Citizen. But at the end of the day, yeah, it looks cool. I like the character customizer. I just wish the beards and that would probably get a little bit of work. They look a little bit patchy. But apart from that, obviously then you can go through and you can do sort of like skills and backgrounds. Like for example, there was like a way that you could go through and do like hero worship or something like that. So traits, you got like, yeah, traits here. You got alien DNA, dream home, empath, extrovert, freestar, hero worshipper, introvert, kid stuff, neon street rat. Like there's a whole bunch of like traits, and you can put 3 in here, up to 3, and they have said that you can change that. So and obviously every trait will have perks and advantages and disadvantages. For example, kid stuff, Your parents are alive and well, and you can visit them at home, but you'll automatically send 2% of your credits home to them every week. So, that's pretty cool. But obviously, at the end of the day, the biggest thing that looks fantastic, and this is obviously one thing that they do have over CIG, is the ship modularity. This part here looks absolutely fantastic. The ability to go through and add components to your ship, break down components, very modular in design. Look, obviously we don't have this with CIG and Star Citizen at the moment, but at the end of the day, they are talking about bringing in modularity, and some of the ships do have it, so maybe in the future. But I would like CIG to sort of incorporate this sort of modularity when it comes to their ships. I think that would be fantastic. But obviously then the problem with that is you have a lot of ships that don't have modularity already, so what do you do with that? But like this here, for example. So you've got cowling, you've got your cockpit, you've got weapons, you've got shield generators, you've got your docker, you got fuel tanks, you got grav drive, you got engines, you got cargo, you got a reactor, landing gear, and a bay, which is obviously sort of like, like an entrance bay. I'm wondering if there's going to be different styles of this sort of stuff, or if you're limited to just these particular styles. Like, for example, is there like a couple of different types of hab units? Are there a different couple of types of docker units, different types of cowlings, different types of weapons? It looks like there's 4 types there. I would like to see sort of like this flushed out a little bit more. Maybe that'll come in an expansion. But yeah, it's sort of like it looks good. And they do go through here and show that you can obviously go through and change things and add new units and add new modules and stuff like that, right? Like here there's them adding this part to this ship. So they take off the front, they put that onto there, and then they put the front on, and then they put the cowling on top. So, looks cool. But at the end of the day, like I say, I do wish there was a little bit more of there might be, I haven't seen it. I wish there was kind of a little bit more of a variant when it comes to those specific snap-on pits. So, different types of cowling, different types of cockpits and stuff like that. But apart from that, the ship stuff looks fantastic. Looks interesting. As for the companions, obviously this is always a big thing with Bethesda games. It's obviously interesting. I'd like to see what sort of situations, like are these guys, are they good in combat? Are they bad? They did say something about romancing the NPCs. We're going to lie and say we're not going to try that. But at the end of the day, obviously, and they did say about you can also go through and find more of these NPC crewmen as you go along. I think they actually show it here. Yeah, here. Where you can actually come along and you find this guy and he's like, hey, do you have a spot on your crew? And you can be like, no, fuck off. Or like, yeah, sure, man, you can join. So that's obviously interesting. And then obviously they have, like skills and stuff like that, or traits and stuff like that too. Obviously spaceflight itself, like I say, I do wonder if you're sort of limited by like the tiles or the area, or maybe the fact that it is space and it's mostly empty, they are able to really expand on those areas. Does make you wonder what's sort of going to happen if you sort of like start getting towards the end of the map. Like I say, I do wonder if you can go through and fly to different planets, or if you have to warp or grav drive there, as they call it. We never actually see them flying between planets. We just see them initiating the grav drive or grav jump, like what they're doing now. But yeah. Apart from that, guys, like I say, it looks fantastic. It's definitely something I'm going to be playing. I did notice as well that if you go through and actually buy the packs. So you buy the expansion. Which one is it here? So the normal one just has the skin and the game, but this one here obviously gives you up to 5 days early access. This is the digital premium. So, yeah. Available day one on Game Pass. Oh. Interesting. Yeah. But yeah, obviously the best thing that obviously they have going for them is obviously like the exploration. And this is where something like where obviously CIG needs to really pick up their slack. Look, obviously at the end of the day, they have these 1,000 worlds, doing air quotes here. I imagine a lot of them are going to be empty, a lot of them are going to be barren. But they also do talk about the fact that you can go there and get materials, like what they're showing at the moment. So obviously at the end of the day, that is pretty cool as well. And that was always the best thing about No Man's Sky, right? Was the exploration sort of thing. But yeah, like I say, obviously at the end of the day, I'm looking forward to just sort of like jumping in your ship and just exploring. And I imagine a lot of people are going to do that and probably not even complete the main quest line. I imagine a lot of people are just going to be like going from planet to planet, building bases and just exploring. But guys, as for that, let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Like I say, as for it, I'm keen. I am interested. I do like it. Even though it does seem to have those constraints. But hey, it's it's a single player game. Yeah. Obviously it will help tie us over. I'm doing air quotes again. Until obviously CIG sort of gets more done with Squadron 42 and releases it. I will be making a video about the release date prediction for that. But guys, yeah, as for the Starfield itself, look, the gameplay looks fantastic. I'm a little bit concerned about questions that weren't answered, questions that sort of were sidestepped, like FPS, stuff like that. But guys, let me know what your thoughts are in that comment section below. Obviously, if this video has been helpful, please smack that like button. If you're new to the channel, welcome and subscribe. Apart from that, guys, obviously, we'll see you in the next demonetized video from YouTube. Have a great night and enjoy.